Deputy Secretary Hannan. The Southcom has concerns that the PLA and their activities in Latin America and the Caribbean. In the hearing they had before the Senate Committee on Armed Services, the Southcom commander, General Laura Richardson, reported that the PLA donates security equipment and provides training to gain access and win favor with security forces in the region. She also said that the PLA is seeking to establish global logistics and basing infrastructure in our hemisphere in order to project and sustain military power at greater distances. My question is twofold. First, how is the State Department seeking to counter this growing military-to-military ties between the PLA and regional militaries, and how is the department interacting with Southcom and other executive departments and educating countries in the region on the risks of increasing ties to the PLA?
Thank you, Senator Rubio, for the question. You know, we remain the preferred partner, security partner in the region over the PRC. We collaborate closely with DoD, Southcom, and Northcom on security and defense. General Richardson went into greater detail about the value of IMET and FMF funding to allow the U.S. to continue to partner, train, and equip military and security forces in the region. We are working to help to ensure that the PRC military does not gain a foothold in the region in any kind of way that would undermine sovereignty or security of our partners. We maintain that deep network and aim to point out that the PRC's ambitions do not stop in the economic space. They are potentially a direct threat to the national security, and we continue to work diplomatically with our allies and partners to raise awareness about the PRC's broader goals and objectives. We are continuing to have those conversations.
The NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act for 2022, I supported language that required the State Department to report to Congress by June of this year on efforts by China to expand its presence and influence Latin America and the Caribbean. Can you tell us what the status of that report is and when it'll be completed?
I can't, but I'll check with my team and get an answer to you.
Mr. Natiello, let me ask. The National Endowment for Democracy report on sharp power in Latin America and the Caribbean, they described the CCP program for reporters and media workers to encourage people-to-people exchanges. These are nothing but communist-driven junkets to expand their ideology throughout the region. What programs are we working with at AID to counter this?
Thank you for the question, Senator Rubio. So USAID absolutely shares this concern about these closing democratic spaces in places like Venezuela, Nicaragua, certainly Cuba. And one of the interventions or one of the investments that we fund in that context is just supporting the free flow of uncensored information, fact-based information to citizens in those countries. We work closely with journalists. We do journalist training. We support them with things like investigative journalism. We do protection of journalists as well, because many journalists in these places work under serious threat and they're in harm's way. One example that I could provide is work that we've done in Ecuador with Ecuadorian journalists to investigate, to analyze, and to report on the issue of illegal and unregulated fishing off Ecuador's coast. And we do that because we want to ensure that Ecuadorian citizens have fact-based information upon which they can make decisions about China and countries like China and whether they want their country working with them. That's one example of the kind of things that we do with journalists around the region on the issue of free flow of information and investigative journalism.
Mr. Herskowitz, the PRC's made the most inroads in their strategic investments in places like Chile, Uruguay, Panama, the Bahamas. It does it by offering financing for infrastructure projects through its Belt and Road Initiative that are otherwise unsupported by American or other international investors. Is the DFC ready to finance projects in those countries as an alternative to BRI lending?
Thank you for the question, Senator. Many of the countries that you've mentioned are high-income countries, and DFC doesn't currently have the legislative authority to support investments in the high-income countries, but we continue to look for opportunities to support strategic investment, whether it's in infrastructure mining, or other strategic investments that will advance U.S. values.
Well, that's why we have an Inter-American Development Bank. So isn't the fact that they're classified as high income an argument for supporting a capital increase to the Inter-American Development Bank and its private sector arm, IDB Invest, which doesn't have those restrictions?
In terms, you're asking whether or not we should be supporting an increased investment in the Inter-American Development Bank? Is that your question?
That's right. If those countries don't qualify for the programs you're offering because they're classified as high income, the alternative would be IDB Invest.
Yeah, I would defer on that question to our colleagues at the U.S. Treasury who are making their recommendations about our interactions with the regional development banks.